How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today is Sunday, which means that I am continuing my playthrough of If My Art Had Wings, out now for the Nintendo Switch, physically still available through PlayAsia. I'm done trying to guess how many quantities are left. There are not many, that's all I know for sure. It's hard to believe that we are now on day 10 of this. That means that I have been playing this now for the past 3 months, and it's just been a great game, a great VN. And I'm looking forward to continuing it today. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I got a good feeling that we have many more weeks to come. I do not think that we are close enough to the end of this game yet to begin saying goodbye to our characters yet. So, let's go ahead and load up. I'm terribly sorry. Our save, and pick right up where we left off last time. And if you want to get caught up, then we do archive all of these streams over at our YouTube channel. So if you do not plan on buying this game yourself, if you just want to see a playthrough of it, then head over there and you can watch in order that I have played. Let's hop back into it. Kaneko had just said, "Hey everyone, the shaved ice is ready." Kaneko came carrying a tray into the yard. As a quick recap, we are at the point in the game where Amane is about to leave because she's finally at the end of her time at the school, and so everyone is throwing a goodbye party, which I thought was really sweet. Thanks for going to all this trouble. Hibari suddenly got a little tearful. That is true. Kotori always looked like she was having fun when she was eating ice cream. Lately, there hadn't been a day where Kotori didn't smile. She seemed to be having fun every day. Not just Kotori, but the rest of us too. Yeah, maybe. The club was something that we could all get into, with people who thought and felt the same. Amane and Isaka had started it, and so we will continue it. But Amane wouldn't be around for much longer.
Oh, かき氷か。俺はレモン味にするかな。
あんちゃん、俺も食っていい？
反省したか？
You might recall that Masa had just gotten his head knocked in.
したよ。俺、女の子に嫌われたくない。
A very good sentiment.
あんたそれどういう反省の仕方よ。
うっせ、お前だけは女とは認めね
え。なんだったかな。たく、いちいち騒がしい連中ね。落ち着いて食べられないじゃん。きっときた。
Poor Kotori.
冷たくて美味しいな。この不思議な青色が食欲をそそる。
Fireworks and shaved ice. This would be remembered as one of the best times from our break. After eating the shaved ice, there were still some fireworks left. It looked like Agea had asked Hotaru and Matatsugu to buy them, but they bought a bit too much. I went over to where Kotori and Agea were to do some more handheld fireworks.
綺麗ね。私はもっとわーって派手な方が好きだけどな。
I like them both, but right now I wanted to enjoy the time we had left quietly. As I lit the handheld firework, Tatsuya came and stood beside me.
ハンちゃんもやる？この鉄砲型のやつとかどう？あ、それ私の最後にやろうと思ってたやつ。
A gun of some kind.
いや、俺はいいよ。 お前らが楽しんでるのこうやって眺めてるだけで十分だ。
Everyone looked at him like they didn't really understand what he meant. Tatsuya sat down next to me and looked over at Amane, who was also enjoying the fireworks. Oh, key visual. Oh, look at her. Look at her face. She's so happy. Amane was lighting sparklers with Matsutsugu and Hotaru.
なんだか可愛いな、この花火は。
線香花火は最後にやるもんだろ。
いいの、好きなんだもん。うん、私もだ。
Ah, what a great visual. Look at this. That's so beautiful.
チェ、女ってこういうの好きだよな。
Tatsuya, as he watched them, had a kind yet sad look in his eyes. Hey, Tatsuya.
Hmm?
Where did Itsuka go? As I asked, I saw Kotori and Agea raise their heads.
どうしてそんなことを聞くんだ?
Tatsuya must have known that it had been on our minds. Despite that, he avoided the answer. Amane told us that she went away somewhere. Well, I don't know. I don't know where she went. That's what Amane said earlier today when I asked her at Windmill Hill. I have a guess as to what she really meant, though. Amane continued to build the glider because she wanted to know why Isuka was so obsessed with it. She said that she might understand it if she could pass through the cloud corridor. Hey, Tatsuya. Why did Isuka go away? I, or rather all of us, had predicted the same answer. That she had died in an accident. It was a terrible thing to think, and we didn't want to be right about it.
さあ、わからない。
You don't know?
事故があったんでしょ?
Tatsuya seemed to be surprised that we knew about it.
ああ、そうだ。いつかはその事故に巻き込まれたらしい。
じゃあ、やっぱり。
In response to Kotori's murmuring, Tatsuya lowered his head as if he didn't have an answer.
あれは夏休みの間に起こった出来事だった。あの時、天音も俺も風が浦にはいなかったんだ。事故があったことは壊れた機体を見れば明らかだった。けど、そこで何があったかは結局教えられず、いつかは二度と戻ってこなかった。
I think that's almost more sad than knowing she's dead, because at that point you just sort of assume. That's actually almost sadder. So, did she die after all? However, it seemed that Tatsuya had another explanation.
もしその事故でイスカが死んだのなら、もっと大きな問題になっていたはずだ。しかし、学校側は事故をもみ消し、なかったことにした。以来、その話はタブーとなった。
探さなかったの？
探そうとしたさ。けど、イスカは寮生で一人暮らし。実家がどこにあるか誰も知らなかった。
Well, actually, that wouldn't be that hard for them to find out, because Aoi's mom is best friends with the landlady who owns the manor, which means they would have records of Isuka and her family, so it wouldn't be that hard to do some detective work.
トビウオ荘のオーナーさんなら知っていたんじゃ。
I thought of it first. I said it before she did. I talked before I pressed the A button. I claim credit, all credit.
教えてはもらえなかった。どうやら口止めされていたらしい。
Then Amane also.
ああ、あいつも俺と同じでイスカがどうなったのか知らないはずだ。アマネはイスカがいなくなった後もグライダー制作を続けた。まるでそうすることでイスカが戻ってくるって信じてるみたいに。
あんちゃんも続けてたんでしょ?
Tatsuya shook his head. That meant he was saying no.
イスカがいなくなった後、 アマネは変わった。人を寄せつけなくなった。
So she hasn't always been this way?
あのアマネちゃんが
We looked at each other in disbelief.
それ以来、俺はアマネと疎遠になっていった。気には留めていたんだがな。
Man, I gotta play this again on my own time just to pick up on this, because this explains so much about Amane's behavior up till now.
誰もいないガレージで孤独に浸るあいつを見ているのが辛かった。それに何より、突然イスカを失って、俺もかなり参ってた。
I didn't know what to say. Amane continuing to work on the glider all alone in that great big garage. Tatsuya hurt deeply from losing someone. I didn't want to imagine either of them like that.
私たちが出会った時、アマネちゃんはすぐに私たちを受け入れてくれたわ。でも部員を入れることには積極的じゃなかったわ。
It's been very rare that we see Ageo in that pose. The thing that made her become more positive was Kotori bringing the photo and Isuka's flight log.
歳月が傷を癒して、アマネの堅くなさも評価していったんだろう。けど、あいつがあんなに楽しそうにしてるのは、葵たちのおかげだと思う。
What a nice sentiment.
また色が変わった。面白いな。綺麗ですね。
An innocent smile lit up Amane's face as she watched the little sparks crackling and popping. The rainbow-colored lights reflected in her eyes as she watched earnestly with wonder. Amane found little mysteries in each of the little sparks, and her curiosity made her heart flutter.
なあ、誰のが一番長いか競争しようぜ。
いいよ。おお、面白そうだな。やろうやろう。
Tatsuya watched over her with a nostalgic look in his eyes, but it was like he was looking at something far, far away.
俺は自分のことで手一杯で、友達だったあいつに何もしてやれなかった。都合のいい話だが、お前たちがあいつと出会ってくれたことに心から感謝してる。
Tatsuya, why don't you join us? Tatsuya shook his head.
俺はとっくに引退した身だ。OB として手伝えることがあれば手を貸すよ。引退までの間、アマネのこと頼む。
Ageo, Kotori, and I all nodded silently at Tatsuya's request. Tatsuya's cell phone started to ring.
悪い。もしもし、達也です。はい。はい。本当ですか、吉沢さん。わかりました。明日の朝一番で取りに行きます。
I wonder what that's about. Tatsuya had a smile on his face as he ended the call. What is it?
喜べ、お前ら!
Did they fix the winch? When he told us the news, we suddenly became about twice as excited as he was. Then... Tomorrow! The winches! When we told her, Amane tilted her head and looked at us dubiously. We could start testing again! From tomorrow! Our sad feelings had gone away. Our hearts were filled with excitement for tomorrow. Well, that's exciting. Kotori's gonna finally fly, I think.
校舎裏にひっそりと立つ古びたガレージ。
Is that Isuka's voice?
誰かが使っている様子はなく、誰からも見向きもされていない。何か面白いものがあるかもと、こっそり中に忍び込んでみた。
初めてあれを見た時はなんか変なものがあるなって程度で大して興味もなかった。
Is this her journal?
それが180度変わったのはあの写真を見つけてから。一冊のノートに大事に挟んであったそれはとても綺麗な雲の写真。こんな美しい空があってもいいのってくらいグレートな空。けどなんか変だ。なんでだろうこの写真。あ、わかった。そう、その写真は雲の上から撮影されていたのだ。挟んであったノートのページにはこう書かれてあった。なんという幸運だろう。我々は風ヶ浦に突如出現したモーニンググローリーを偶然にも飛ぶことができた。それはもう奇跡と言ってもいい素晴らしい体験だった。モーニンググローリー？飛んだ？そのノート、高校日誌を読み進めるうちに僕はどんどんのめり込んでいった。雲の写真はこのガレージを使っていた人たちがグライダーという飛行機に乗って空の上から撮影したもので、そのグライダーにはエンジンはついてなくて風に乗って雲の上まで飛ぶんだという。一体どんな気分だろう、風に乗って空を飛ぶのは。あの美しい雲の回廊を渡るのは。そうして思いを巡らせた時、もうそこに打ち捨てられたグライダーを修復し雲の彼方を目指そうと。次の日僕は早速そのグレートな計画を親友に打ち明けた。
That's new.
日も暮れてきたし、今日はこの辺にしときますか。
I was taking a breather after returning from a flight. We could go one more time, can't we? We still had a little more time before the sun went completely down.
この辺り街灯なんてないし、日が落ちる前でもかなり暗くなるよ。そしたら着陸の時危ないじゃん。
She was right. Coming into land just now, it had been hard to see the runway, making it difficult to judge the distance.
というわけで今日はもうおしまい。小鳥、撤収するよ。
Agea called Kotori on her cell phone. Kotori was all the way by the winch.
今日はもう終わりか。
Looks like it. Just when the perfect wind for training was starting to blow too.
しょうがない。事故を起こすわけにはいかないからな。
As she spoke, Amane looked towards the eastern sky. Like always, the sunset was glowing orange. Same as always, huh? Judging from the sky tonight, the weather would be just like always the following morning. I watched Amane from the side as she looked to the sky. It seemed as if she was waiting for something. So I guess Kotori didn't get a flight that day. Not yet. Not until later. Since we had the winch again, we'd been doing as many test flights as possible every day. There were still adjustments to be made to the glider, but the main priority for now was for Amane and I to get flight training.
今日かなり高くまで上がってたね。どのくらい行った？
It was around 2,000 feet.
ほう、記録更新だね。だいぶつかめてきたんじゃない？
Yeah, but it's still hard to ride the thermals. Thermals were vertical drafts formed by air heated by the Earth's surface. They occurred over ground that heats up easily, such as soil or asphalt. By catching these thermals, we could fly to higher altitudes. However, these invisible air currents were not always easy to catch. The atmosphere was fickle. The flow of air and the strength of the wind could change at any time, or even suddenly disappear. But this was something we had to get used to if we were going to fly high enough to reach the morning glory. Amane looked down at her pasta and pushed it around with her fork. You don't like it?
ああ、いや、そうじゃないんだ。ちょっと考え事をしてただけだ。
She gave a faint smile and prodded at her pasta. I looked towards Agea and shrugged. Kotori was next to Amane, absorbed in reading a book that she had borrowed from the library. Why don't you do that after you finished eating? She wasn't listening. For a while now, Kotori had been researching the Morning Glory. Since we had started the test flights, Kotori, being in a wheelchair, had nothing to do except operate the winch. I worried that she felt like she was useless. But she had been really involved in the construction of the main wings too, so that wasn't true at all. And because she had been reading so much, we had found out about something important. A few days ago, after the farewell party,
オーストラリアのバークタウンで起こる気象現象について書いてあるわね。
Hibari was reading from a book written in English after being pestered by Kotori. It was a book about the Morning Glory. According to the book, there were clouds that appeared above Australia that could stretch for thousands of miles. And it wasn't just one cloud, it could be many at the same time. When the sun came up and the temperature increased, the clouds would disappear after about 2 hours. For the people who lived there, it was a sign of rain and raging winds beneath the clouds. The clouds were usually somewhere around 4,000 feet in altitude. If you rode the vertical drafts well, it was possible to reach them.
海風と陸風が衝突してできる前線が発生の原因なんですって。夜になると気流が冷えて下降し、逆転層が。
メカニズムが分かれば予想は立てやすくなるけど、風が浦とオーストラリアじゃ地形も気象も違いすぎるわね。
もっとこう分かりやすい前兆とかないのかしら。ここにそれらしいことが書いてあるわ。
Hibari translated as she read.
北から湿った強い風が吹き、夕暮れ時東の空が紫色になる。パブの冷蔵庫に水滴ができたら翌日起こるんですって。この辺りにパブってあったかしら。
Calm down. This is talking about Australia.
気温が低く湿度が高い早朝に発生することが多いですって。
気温が低く湿度は高く、前日の夕方東の空が紫色にか。
ちょっと待って。
Kotori excitedly opened a page in the old notebook. It was the flight log written by one of the old members.
ほら、ここ見て。
Kotori opened it to the page that explained the signs that were seen on the day before the morning glory in the photo. They had done a survey of the weather that day, and there was detailed information on the conditions written in the journal.
テストをした16時頃の気温は23度。真夏の日中にしちゃ随分低いわね。
その後、日暮れから強い風が吹いて肌寒いくらいだったって書いてあるわ。
This was written in the remarks column, so there must have been quite a big change in air temperature. As for the color of the sky, it doesn't say. The thing was, the person who had made the recordings hadn't known that the morning glory was going to come the next day. Without realizing it, they had recorded signs that might indicate the morning glory was coming.
これはかなりのヒントなんじゃない？
ありがとう、お姉ちゃん。どういたしまして。
Since then, Kotori had been checking the weather forecast every night and reading books about weather. So, we had 3 signs that might indicate the coming of a morning glory. 1. The day before, a strong, warm, humid wind blows, and it's so humid that water droplets can appear on a fridge in a pub. 2. At dusk the day before, the eastern sky will turn purple. 3. It's much colder than most summer days. Perhaps it wasn't accurate at all, but it was the only information we had to go on.
ねえ葵、今日の当番って誰だっけ？
I'm not sure. Every day we took turns to wake up before dawn to check if the morning glory had appeared. We did it every day, regardless if there were signs or not. Whose turn was it today? Ah, no! Don't do this to me! Oh, Kotari's the only choice, actually, so... Okay, I'm going to do a save real quick. Literally, Kotari is the only choice.
前のデータ消えるよ。それでいい？
So, in that case, I pick Kotari. What the what? I guess during further playthroughs, you'll be able to pick other people. But I was going to pick Kotari anyway. Isn't it Kotari's? Kotari lifted her head.
そうよ。
Well then, I'd better take a bath and go to bed. If the morning glory actually came, we'd have to fly right away. We had covered the glider with a sheet and left it ready to go on the runway. Even if there was no morning glory, we could go flying first thing in the morning. It looked like the weather might be a little rough, but if it didn't look like it would rain, we would still go. There's no way we would let this 1 in a million chance pass us by. I can't get back to sleep. I closed my eyes and rolled over in bed for a while, but that didn't help at all. I sat up and opened the curtains. The sky was dark, and I could see stars scattered across the sky. I went outside for a better view, and I saw Kotari staring up at the sky in the middle of the garden. How is it?
葵くん。何もなさそう。
I see. I looked at the sky. All I could see were the stars shining, but no signs of the clouds we were looking for. It was quiet. It was so quiet, it felt like there was only the 2 of us in this world.
来ると思う？
I don't know. Maybe.
来てくれたら最高の夏休みになるのに。
Yeah. But even if it doesn't happen, to me, it would still be the best summer break ever. Summer breaks were always fun, but this year, it had been the best.
私もこんな気分になるのは久しぶり。
Huh?
夏休みが終わるのが寂しい。
Is there anyone who doesn't feel like that? Kotari shook her head.
足を怪我してからずっと私にとって夏休みの終わりは新学期の始まりだった。また嫌でしょうがない学校が始まっちゃう。だから終わってほしくなかった。ただそれだけ。けど今は違うの。夏休みが楽しいから。楽しすぎて終わってほしくない。
Summer will come around again. If we are alive, it will come around dozens more times. But this year, the best summer break yet will only happen once. It's not good, is it? For something to be too fun. I think I'm going to be burned out in the second term. As I spoke, Kotari giggled.
私ね、イスカのこと自分の友達みたいに思ってたの。
Your friend? Kotori nodded and she seemed quite embarrassed.
イスカが高校日誌にいつかここからいなくなるって書いてたの覚えてる？
Yeah, I remember. The same kind of thing was written several times.
私ね、あれを読んで自分のことみたいに思ってた。私も同じように感じてたから、いつか自分はここを去るんだって。
Kotori, who was disabled and didn't really fit into the class, was seriously thinking about quitting school. For a long time, she felt like she didn't belong here, and probably felt empathy when she read Isuka's flight log. And then, you copied her by making that list. The things I want to do list that Isuka wrote was something she pursued herself.
あの頃、私友達なんて一人もいなかったから、イスカの日記を読んで彼女を友達みたいに思って、それで寂しさを紛らわせてたの。今思うとバカみたいよね。
That's not true. Because of you feeling like that, we're all here now.
だから私、あまねちゃんとはまた別でイスカの夢を叶えられたらって思ってる。友達として。
Really? I also had special feelings about Isuka. She was Amane's best friend and left the glider behind for us. Also, I now knew that to Kotori, Isuka was a friend that eased her loneliness. Amane and Kotori were both my beloved friends. That's why I felt like I owed a lot to Isuka.
恥ずかしいこと告白しちゃった。
Then why do you seem so happy?
なんでだろう。葵くんにはつい話しちゃうんだよね。
Isn't that because we're close friends? I said it as a joke, but Kotori, sitting there in her wheelchair, looked downwards.
そうかも。
Oh, look at all the red on her face. Poor girl. Bless her. She seemed kind of awkward, but happily accepted me as a close friend.
私がまだここにいて、こうして素敵な夏を過ごせてるのは全部葵くんのおかげ。ありがとう。
Sure. I meekly replied, but inside, I felt the same way. If it weren't for Kotori, I never would have come in contact with the glider. Even if I had come across it, it definitely wouldn't have been as much fun. The sun is about to rise. The sky started to turn bright. I guess I should get breakfast ready. Everyone would be getting up soon. Then another busy day would begin. What a nice conversation.
お腹すいた。みんなまだ帰ってきてないのか。頑張るな。冷蔵庫になんかないかな。ガッガッ。チッスン、ハット先輩。どうしたの？あんたもお腹すいた？ガッガッ。餌じゃないのか。じゃあ水浴び？ガー。そっかそっか。
Kaneka's gonna go give Hattie a
今日
bath.
は涼しいね。これなら下着じゃなくても平気だわ。グワグワ。はいはい、水浴びね。グワー。気持ちよさそうでいいね。私も後でシャワー浴びよっと。クワックワックワッ。ん？ねえ、ハット先輩。なんだろうあれ。あ、ほら。 なんか空が
Is this happening? Is this actually happening?
うっすら紫色してない。
The direction is
東よ。ってことは
the eastern sky was bluish purple. We were packing up after finishing flight training for the day, but had stopped working to gaze at the eastern sky.
予兆なのかな。
This was the moment we had been waiting for. But we were careful not to get our hopes up yet. I don't know, but until now it hasn't been that color.
さあどうだろう。注意して見てたことないもん。気温は25度。昨日より3度低いわ。
That's pretty significant.
湿度はやや高め。風も出てきてる。これはもしかするかも。
We all looked towards Amane. Amane looked to the eastern sky. She was just standing there, quietly. While looking at the signs that indicated that the phenomenon could occur, she seemed to be assessing the situation. Or maybe she was praying.
あまねちゃん。うん。
It might happen tomorrow morning. There were 2 days left of the summer break. This was the time limit for Amane's activities with the Soaring Club.
先輩。わかってる。うん。大丈夫だ。
I gave Kotori a prod and spoke quietly to her. The second in charge should take care of occasions like this.
そうだった。おはん。みんな聞いて。モーニンググローリーは明日の朝必ず現れる。そう信じましょう。だから今夜は当番関係なく全員夜明け前に起きてフライトの準備をするわよ。ああ。
I wonder what's going on in her mind. This is looking very promising. It was 4 a.m. Mwah! Good night, everybody. Because if you're awake at that time, what's wrong with you? Don't make too much noise. Kanako's still sleeping.
了解。了解。ああ。
Kotori!
ごめん。
We got up at the usual time and carried our things outside. There was still 1 hour before the sun rise. We had to complete our lunch preparations before then. Launch.
ずいぶんと冷えるわね。薄着だとちょっと肌寒いくらいね。
Amane, will you be alright in those clothes?
ああ、大丈夫だ。ビシッとしてよね、あまねちゃん。これから雲の上まで飛ぶんだから。
Kotori, you're being too loud. Ageya, how's the sky?
よくわかんない。
This is it. The sky was still dark and it was hard to see with the naked eye whether there were any clouds. Anyway, let's hurry. If we hang about for too long, we won't make it in time for dawn. Is this it? We arrived at the runway and immediately began working on the assembly. Right aileron?
OK。
Left aileron.
問題なし。
Next is the elevator. While this was going on, I ate a rice ball that I had made the night before. I had to do something about an empty stomach.
あまねちゃん、さっきからどうしちゃったの？すまない。別に何でもないんだ。
I can only imagine what's going on in her mind right now.
大丈夫よ。きっとうまくいくから。はい、おにぎり食べて元気出して。ありがとう。葵、いけそう？
I don't know. In the training, I finally figured out how to catch the thermals. The highest we'd flown in training was close to 2,000 feet. We wouldn't be able to reach the Morning Glory at an altitude like that. Suddenly, a strong wind blew.
Aoi-kun, だいぶブレーキを出してくれ。
Got it! Even when the glider was on the ground, a lift could be created when the wind hits the main wings. With winds this strong, if we were careless, the aircraft might start floating upwards. That's why we used the landing equipment while we were on the ground. We had to reduce the lift so the glider wouldn't float away.
急に風が出てきたわね。モーニンググローリーの影響かしら。
It's said in the book that when Morning Glory appeared in Burketown, Australia, raging winds were blowing beneath the clouds. We'll need to use a crosswind launch. When strong winds blow from the side, the glider will be blown with them, so we had to use a special technique for takeoff. We hadn't practiced it much, but we should be fine.
見て、夜が明けてきた。
The eastern sky became dimly bright. Also, the conditions of the sky became clear.
あそこにある雲。
Dawn hadn't fully broken yet, and the sky was still gloomy, but we could see the outline of the clouds. These clouds could be called Morning Glory, but they were very delicate and looked like they could disappear any minute.
小鳥、発行準備。ラジャー。
Everyone quickly got into position. Amane and I got into our seats in the cockpit. That's different.
横風が強いぞ、葵君。
Okay, I'll use full rudder from the start. I pushed down on the rudder pedal. If we were hit with a crosswind during takeoff, the glider would turn into the wind. This was called the weather vane effect. By turning the rudder in the opposite direction, we could reduce the weather vane effect. However, the rudder has almost no effect without speed, so I had to push down and gradually release it as we accelerated. This was the first time we'd taken off in such strong crosswinds. I had no choice but to just do it what I could.
ランウェイズクリア。
That was in English. Agea came to let us know that there were no obstructions on the runway. Then she moved around to the side of the glider and lifted the left wing a little higher than usual this time. The wind was blowing from the front right direction. If the wing stayed level during takeoff, the wind from the side would go under the right wing and mess up the balance. That's why we needed to launch with the right wing a little lower to stop the crosswind from going under it. To maintain the angle at which Agea was tilting the wing, I moved the yoke to the right to control the right aileron. Launch preparations complete. Here we go, Amane. Amane replied nervously. I gave the thumbs up signal to Agea.
発行準備完了。小鳥、上げて。
I heard a sound under the glider. The moment Agea had given the signal, the winch had started turning. The glider steadily accelerated. I pulled back on the yoke.
頼んだわよ、葵。
Agea was holding onto the wing, running along with us, but she let go as the glider rose up into the air, leaving her behind. The glider wobbled like crazy when the crosswind hit.
大丈夫？葵君、あまねちゃん。
We're okay. We've leveled out.
なんとか無事だ。
As we accelerated, the aileron started working, and we were able to maintain our bank against the crosswind. I hope they brought a camera. I tilted the rudder in the direction of the incoming wind, and the glider steadily ascended into the sky. This air current is really fast. We're climbing higher than usual. It might seem like we're flying at the usual speed, but the headwind hitting the glider was stronger, so our airspeed was faster. When the airspeed is high, lift increases, which causes the glider to rise. Then the wind was strong that morning. The force of the winch pulling us clashed against the power of the main wings as they lifted us up and caused the glider to shake. Releasing! Just before we flew over Kotori, who was operating the winch, I released the tow rope. Whoosh. Freed from the force that was holding us down, the glider was suddenly thrown up into the air. I immediately turned around to check that the tow rope had been released. Okay. I checked the altitude on the altimeter. We were currently close to 1,000 feet above the ground. Then I looked up at the sky above. Outside the dome-shaped canopy, all I could see was the sky. A sky changing from night to morning. Indigo, orange, pale yellow. The morning sun painted a complex gradient as far as the eye could see. In the middle, a straight line of clouds stretched out into the distance. Amazing. I felt like I was being sucked into it as I stared at the spectacle. Oh, I was wondering when we would see these girls again. Oh, I wish she could have been in the glider to see it herself. Whoa! Clutching the yoke, I somehow managed to maintain our position. The wind is getting really rough. It's taking everything I've got just to keep our position. On days where the airflow was stable, I only needed to hold onto the yoke lightly. In these rough conditions, the glider was constantly shaking, and we couldn't tell when we would be hit with a sudden gust of wind. I focused as hard as I could, as the glider was buffeted by the wind. I'm fine. Can you check if there are any thermals, Amane? Amane looked outside the canopy to search for places where thermals might be. Clouds were the markers used for finding thermals. Clouds are formed when moist air rises and is cooled in the sky. Therefore, thermals were usually below the clouds. As I watched the variometer, I flew based on guesswork. The variometer is one of those instruments in the glider and tells us whether it is rising or descending based on atmospheric pressure. If there was a sudden change in the variometer, that could mean we had entered a thermal without realizing. There's no change, huh? There was no change on the variometer, and the glider was gradually descending. Amane pointed excitedly out the window. Where? Roger. I pulled the yoke to the right and pushed the rudder pedals to turn the glider. Jeez! The rudder feels heavy! When the ailerons or the rudder took strong winds, they became heavier, but that means that their effect is stronger. Is that it? In my field of vision, I could see the small cloud Amane had found. It was a small, fine, elongated cloud. Please let this work! I prayed as I flew the glider under the cloud. We continued for a while, but we couldn't hit any thermals. After all, we couldn't see them, so we didn't really know if one was there or not. Where is it? I went to turn and head towards another area. Then, I felt part of the glider floating. Whoa! The left wing tilted up and made the aircraft tilt. Yes, I know. This wasn't the feeling of being shaken by a crosswind. A rising thermal grazed the wings. I quickly turned the rudder to the left. The variometer signaled that the glider was rising. We've entered a thermal! As we confirmed that, I continued to turn the glider. Thermals extend upwards through the atmosphere, somewhat like a pillar. In most cases, the strongest lift is called the core and is located at the center. The lift gets weaker as it moves out from the core. That's why, if you want to go higher, you must get as close to the core of the thermals as possible. I turned the glider to search for the core. The variometer told us that we were rising. We were getting closer and closer to the core. Amane examined the instruments. I tried to keep the glider circling in the same area so we would rise in the core of the thermal. Alright, we're rising. Through the seat, I felt that the glider was rising. As a joke, we called this the butt meter, but it was important to feel the G-force through the seat. That's because usually you could feel the aircraft's reaction before the glider's instruments picked it up. I paid close attention while operating the controls so we didn't lose the updraft that we had finally found. We won't be able to rise any higher here. The G-forces that felt so strong at first were getting weaker. We had risen as far as we could and were now just maintaining the current altitude. If we stayed here like this, the thermal might grow and be able to gain stronger lift. Considering the time it was likely that would happen. Thermals occur when sunlight warms up the ground at a fast rate, causing hot air to rise. Since last night had been cool, when the morning sun hit the dewy earth, strong thermals would probably occur. But we didn't have time to wait for that. If we waited for the sun to completely rise, by then morning glory would have disappeared. We're getting out of this thermal. As we looked over to the morning glory in the distance, we flew out of the thermal. Thermals are often thought to extend straight up like a pillar through the air, but they don't. Like smoke getting blown by the wind, thermals will shift and twist when hit by the wind. The thermal that we were climbing was leaning to one side, which caused us to move further away from the morning glory. The morning glory doesn't just stay in one place. It was moving across the lake. If it got too far away, it would be difficult to reach, as the only way to speed up with a glider is to fall. Increasing speed. I pushed the yoke forward and pointed the nose downwards. As we slid down through the air, the glider accelerated. Whenever the nose was pointed downwards, the ground always comes into view. Amane, who is afraid of heights, stifled a scream. Amane will be okay. This glider will not fall. I'll make sure of that. I wonder what that's about. What's with those two? We've caught up with it. To get back to a higher altitude, we search for the next thermal. In theory, they occur more easily above wide areas of asphalt or soil, like parking lots. Amane pointed towards the runway from which we had taken off. It was a wide area of soil and was in direct sunlight. It certainly met the conditions needed for thermals to be made easily. Alright. Don't panic, we're just searching for thermals. That's right.
けどこの時間帯じゃサーマルを見つけるのも大変よね。ちょうどいい場所にこれから発達しそうな雲でもあればいいんだけど。他に何か目印はないの？あとは実際に飛んでみるしか。もう少しなのに。双眼鏡貸して。何かないか探してみる。
Oh, smart. Good for Kotori. We did get some lift above the runway, but it was weak. It wasn't enough to raise the heavy double-seater glider. It must be because the ground hasn't warmed up enough to create a strong thermal. Aren't there any around here? In the meantime, the glider was gradually descending. Whoa! Then there was the wind. Perhaps because of the presence of the morning glory, the airflow was being disturbed. The glider wobbled as it was hit by the strong winds, temporarily reducing the lift, and causing a drop in altitude. I started to feel impatient. Should we have stayed over there after all?
でもそれだと
The thermal cloud from before had moved even further away from the direction we want to head in. Even if we could rise to the altitude we needed, we would be too late. How much time had passed since we took off? The sky became brighter as it changed from the pale morning glow to light blue. Oh, another key visual. Lots of Amane love today. Amane mumbled to herself, while she looked up at the passage of cloud stretching across the sky. No, that's not true! It's right in front of us! We'll do something about it. Kotori and Agea were also looking for clouds from the ground. We hadn't reached the time limit yet.
やっぱりだいぶ高度を下げてる。サーマルを見つけられないのね。どうしよう。このままじゃあの綺麗な雲に届かないよ。頑張っても上昇気流が吹かないんじゃどうしようもないわね。トンビが飛んでるわ。グライダーも鳥さんみたいに羽をバサバサやって飛べればいいのにな。だからエンジンを乗せればいいのにって。あら、どうしたのヨルちゃん。こっちへ来るみたい。え、ほんとだ、こっちに来る。頑張れ頑張れ。変ね、こっちの空にもそれらしい雲なんてないのに。超頑張ってー。
Are you sure, Kotori?
間違いない。双眼鏡じゃ小さくしか見えなかったけど。
In response to Kotori's transmission, we headed across the lake towards Windmill Hill. There should be some thermals over there. There aren't even any clouds that seem to indicate thermals.
サーマルがあるからといって必ずしも雲が作られるわけじゃない。それに多分丘が斜面になっているせいだと思う。
Do you mean that thermals occur more easily above slopes?
ああ、太陽光は地表に対して斜めに降り注いでいるだろう。けど斜面になっていればその光を正面から受けられる。その分エネルギーが集中して温まりやすいんだ。
It's true, the sloping surface of the hill that we are heading towards is shining from being in direct light of the morning sun. How is it, Kotori?
いたいた、見つけた。さっきよりかなり高くまで上がってる。間違いない。トンビよ。
We couldn't see from where we were, but it seems that a kite was flying above the hill. Kites are birds that glide to high altitudes using updrafts. In other words, there would probably be a thermal where they are. However, that didn't necessarily mean there was enough lift to carry a heavy double-seater glider. But there was nothing else for us to try. I didn't think of anything other than aiming for that point. Eventually, the glider crossed the lake and approached the air above Windmill Hill. Then, suddenly... Whoa! The aircraft shook. The variometer told us that the glider had dropped sharply. Had we been caught in a downward draft? I panicked, and the next moment, we felt another huge impact. Suddenly, it felt like we were being pushed from below, and the glider steadily floated upwards. Then, a little later, the variometer informed us that we were rising. We had caught a thermal. It's pretty strong. We can do this, Amane.
すごい。もうあんな高さまで。ね、あったでしょ？
Yeah, way to go, Kotori.
褒められちゃった。上まで上がれそうなの？
We've got strong lift. I think they can make it.
天音先輩のこと頼んだわよ。
Leave it to me.
よーし、行ってこい。あの雲の向こうまで。
Yeah, with the wings that you guys made.
すごい。こんなに高くまで。風に乗ってるだけなのに、どうしてあんなに高く飛べるの？理屈なら説明できるけど、聞きたい？聞いてもわからないし、それにあんなの理屈で説明できるわけないと思う。理屈がないとあんな大きなもの飛べないわよ。すごいよ、すごい。
Before we knew it, the powerful thermals occurring above Windmill Hill had lifted us high up in the sky. We were getting closer and closer to the morning glory. We're getting closer, Amane. The clouds that, from below, seemed small and intermittent were huge when we got close to them. I wondered how wide they were. At the very least, they would have been able to cover this glider. The length stretched out to around the same distance it would be to go diagonally across the lake. No problem. If we could keep going above the clouds, it should be easy to pass across them. So I guess we're what, a mile high now? The thermal that we were riding was pretty powerful. As Amane had just explained, the hill was in direct sunlight, so it had heated up quickly. That meant that the difference in temperature would be bigger here compared to the surrounding area. If there was no temperature difference, thermals would not occur. If there was a big difference, however, a strong thermal would form. The upward draft that Kotori had found for us seemed strong enough to take us all the way to the horizon. All the while, the sun was rising and the air temperature was increasing. Morning glory occurs for about 2 hours from the beginning of dawn. Come on, come on. I was getting impatient. However, if we tried too hard, we'd lose balance and we might lose altitude too. While checking the rate of ascent on the variometer, I turned the glider to aim for the core of the thermal. Eventually, Amane and I, riding the wind in our glider, reached the altitude of the morning glory that we had been chasing. Then we had soon risen above that and reached a position where we could view it from above. I think we got a CG film here, guys. Look, Amane. I knew she'd been looking at it, but I said it anyway. It was because I was so moved. Was there anyone who wouldn't be moved to see a spectacle like this? With the bluish-purple sky in the background, the passenger clouds shone as they were bathed in the pale pink sunlight. Words like beautiful wouldn't really express it at all. The word that came to mind was divine. To reach the altitude that would let us fly above the clouds, I gripped the yoke with trembling hands and turned us into the thermal. I glanced at the front seat and saw Amane's face from the side. Her eyes were wide open as she looked at the passage of clouds stretching across the sky.
いつかが私に見せたがっていた景色。私を連れて行こうとしていた場所。
Amane, can you get the camera?
ああ、そうだった。
They did bring the camera. Before we took off, Age had given her a digital camera. She asked us to take a picture if we were able to fly above the morning glory. This was the perfect viewpoint, looking across the clouds.
撮ったぞ。
Oh, look at that. Alright, let's go. To that place.
あ
Amane nodded as if preparing herself. We didn't come here just to look at the clouds. We came to pass across them. Once we had gained enough altitude, I tilted the yoke and turned the glider. Now it's time for us to go. The airflow here was calm, and we could fly without being shaken by crosswinds. Higher in the sky, there were hardly any clouds, and the clear light blue gradient of the dawn spread out in all directions. While keeping an eye on our rate of descent, we traveled through the crystal clear sky. We approached the passage of cloud. A rolling airflow occurs around the clouds, and if we caught it, we could pass through the cloud corridor, and even beyond that. We finally arrived. The morning glory was right there, at our fingertips. And as I thought that... Suddenly it happened. Our view swung round, and the divine road of the cloud that should have been right there in front of us was getting further away. We had suddenly lost lift, and a few moments later, we realized that the glider was rapidly descending. What? I quickly pulled at the yoke, but there was no response. We spun around again and couldn't even figure out if we were facing up or down. What's going on? Was it a stall? However, there were no signs that it was going to happen. It was just like... Yes, it was just like there was no air, and we had lost all of our lift. We were going to crash.
どうしたの？なんかあった？落ちてる？嘘！ちょっと双眼鏡貸して。やばい！どうしちゃったの？葵くん、応答して！葵くん！応答して！葵くん！
Can't deal with you right now. The surface of the lake appeared from the other side of the canopy. We were falling with the nose pointing straight down.
葵くん！
I'll do something! In the heat of the moment, I can't remember what I did. Anyway, I tried to lift the nose up and stabilize the wings. Whoa! The glider shuddered violently. It felt like the fuselage had broken in half. To us, the pilots, the impact passed through our bodies, and for a moment, I thought we had crashed. Looks like it. The nose and the wings leveled out, and the glider had gained back its lift and was floating. We were pretty close to the surface of the water. In that split moment, we had lost a lot of altitude. If I had been a few seconds later, my whole body trembled with fear and relief. Are you alright, Amane?
なんとか。
Her shoulders were shaking, but she was able to reply. What happened just now? There had been no signs of a stall. It is often said that stalls can occur without warning, but for it to occur somewhere that had such stable airflow...
強い下降気流に巻き込まれたのかもしれない。
You mean just now? If that were true, it was pretty strong. Do things like this really happen?
夏の間、湖や大きな河川の中央付近では、時折ダウンバーストが発生することもあるらしい。
Downbursts were powerful downward drafts. If a downburst, a giant mass of air, falls to Earth, it is powerful enough to cause severe damage. If we were swallowed by something like that, we wouldn't stand a chance. The place we were drifting was near the center of the lake, as Amane had been saying. We had been so distracted by the morning glory, we had lost track of our position. Because of the water, the air cools, so it was possible that a strong downward draft had been created. If the air itself was rushing downwards, a glider would certainly be taken down with it. That might be why we lost lift and fell, suddenly and without any warning signs. We heard Kotori's tearful voice over the radio. We're alive! Somehow we managed to stabilize. Yeah, I bet.
一体何があったの?
We don't know. Amane said that we might have been caught in a strong downward draft. If I had been even a few seconds later, we would have crashed on the lake.
こら、小鳥の心臓が止まっちゃうから。
Yeah. Sorry, but we're all right now. I was just thinking of that. Poor girl can only take so much.
今の何が起こったの? さあ、わからない。故障したのか、あるいは強い下降気流に巻き込まれたのか。でも、なんとか落ちる前に立て直したようね。危なかったわ。もう少し遅れたら死んでたかも。やっぱり人が空を飛ぶのって危ないことだよね。
I want to know who these girls are.
そうね。翼を持たない人間が空に憧れるのは勇気がいるし危険なこと。姉さん?
The morning glory! Oh, it's gone. I looked at the clouds above us. The place where we had just been was now much further away. It was so high up, I was surprised. Let's go up one more time.
無理だ、葵くん。もう間に合わない。
We won't know unless we try. As I shouted, I looked to the sky. At some point, the dawn sky had disappeared, and the sky was now filled with clear blue color. As it was now exposed to the sunlight, the cloud corridor was thinning out and gradually disappearing. I turned the glider towards Windmill Hill. If we rode the same powerful thermal from before, we might be able to make it. I wanted to take Amane there. But
あそこへ行くことはできなかったけど、イスカが見せたかった景色をほんの少し見ることができた。それで十分だよ。
Amane. Amane looked through the canopy at the clouds above.
これでさよならだ。
Amane's whisper, along with the cloud corridor, faded away into the sky. Hi, French Valentine, how's it going? What's up? Well, we just had a really eventful chapter. The last day of the summer break. アマネ。
いや、葵くん。どうしたんだこんな朝早くから。
That's my line. Weren't you at the dormitory? No, you weren't at the dormitory, so I thought you might be here. I woke up early, but I didn't see Amane anywhere, and all the things in her room were packed away.
みんなが来る前に片付けておこうと思ってね。これからすぐ父のラボへ移るんだ。
Huh? Today was the last day of summer break. In other words, the day that Amane leaves the soaring club. We still have one more day, though.
でももうすることがないだろう。
Everyone was planning to get up before dawn again and go to the runway. We didn't think that such a phenomenon would occur 2 days in a row, but even so, we wanted to believe there was a slight chance. However, I knew we wouldn't be able to do it again so soon. When we were caught in the downdraft, a huge amount of G-force had been produced, and the glider had sustained some damage. It was possible to fix it, but there was no way we'd be able to fly today. Amane's dream had been to fly to the morning glory. Now that we had achieved that, there was nothing left to do. You haven't seen any of the others, have you? Why not?
今年の夏休みは楽しかったからな。ここを離れるのが辛くなってしまう。すまないが、君から何か言っておいてくれないか。私はどうも言葉にするのが苦手なんだ。
Amane spoke with a really troubled look on her face. She continued to pack her things into a large travel bag. Since she lived here for a long time, there was a lot of things for her to pack. I'll help you carry it.
いや、いい。どうせいらないものばかりだ。持てない分は置いていくよ。
Amane gazed at her desk, which was still cluttered. As she was looking, her gaze stopped at the photo frame. Are you leaving this behind too? She smiled faintly as she looked at the photo. When I saw her smile, all the feelings of regret that I had bottled up came pouring out. I'm going to continue with the glider. I'll improve, and I will definitely fly to the morning glory in the glider that you and the others have made. Amane nodded, and after thinking a moment, she put down her bag and stood in front of me. She took my hand and held it gently. There was no air conditioning, so it was as hot as a sauna in the garage. My hands were covered in sweat, but her hands were smooth and soft. Then Amane looked me in the eyes.
ありがとう、葵くん。君たちのおかげで最後にあの場所へ行くことができた。見上げることしかできなかった空へ。
As Amane spoke, she had a smile on her face. What about Isuka's feelings? I wanted to ask her if she understood now the reason Isuka had been so obsessed with gliders.
正直、よくわからないままだ。けど、踏ん切りはついた。だから、ありがとうだ。
Amane closed her eyes and hugged me gently. To tell the truth, I thought I was going to cry.
ここにあるものは好きに使ってくれ。滑走路にあるウインチもソアリング部の備品だ。
What about these blueprints? The blueprints had been left on the drawing board.
一応昨晩完成させたんだが、私にはもう必要のないものだ。すまないが、いらないなら捨てておいてくれ。
I couldn't do that. I can't do that.
さてと、そろそろ行かないとバスの時間に間に合わない。
Amane put her bag on her shoulder. She staggered slightly under the weight. I'll walk you to the bus stop.
あ、頼む。
She looked once more at the garage and gave a smile as crisp and sunny as the summer sky, then left it behind. The garage, where she spent so many years shut away inside.
最高に楽しい夏休みだったな。
Seems like a perfect safe spot to me.
セーブデータを上書きしてもいいのね。
Okay, so that was a really eventful stream for If My Heart Had Wings. Man, that was a perfect, just an absolutely perfect chapter. I'm so glad we got to finally see Morning Glory. It's clear that this game does not end with that. It's pretty obvious there's a lot left. I can't wait to see it. So we will be continuing this next Sunday, the usual time, and every Sunday until the game is complete. But of course, we got 2 streams before then. I'll be back on Tuesday to play something else. Until then, on behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day, great week, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.